I mean, who can forget the day when the sun shone over White City in London back in 1968, when Neil Fox stepped up on the touchline from the halfway line, popped over the goal to win the Challenge Cup for Wakefield against Leeds. It's a day that Nadine Dorries has never forgotten.
Or indeed remembered.
Welcome to Rugby Union's #1 podcast. I think she's on the Good, the Bad and the Rugby this week. She's not on this programme anyway. Maybe she's on, what's his name? He's got a podcast now. James Graham. He's got the biggest rugby podcast in Britain, apparently. We're all taking over. Give us back our share of the pie. It's 4020, not live. I'm going to regret wearing this shirt. If you're not watching, I'm wearing a Wait for a Rugby Union shirt. They're very heavy, these things. Match 1, number 14, it says on the back. Is that a wing or something? I don't know. Phil, there's loads of news going on.
Match worn and pristine, because clearly if you were number 14, you would have never done it. No, let's not go there.
Number 17 is, I don't know where I got them from. But there's lots of news going on, Phil. I mean, everyone's moving clubs, which is all exciting. But I guess the biggest move of the week so far is Tony Smith out of Hull KR, which many people predicted as soon as he said, I'm off. Many thought that might happen after the semi-final, but it's taken a defeat to Toulouse Olympique for him to fall on his sword, or them to stab him in the back, whichever way you want to go on that one.
Yeah, I suspect we've had more movement, rumour, innuendo, speculation than politics at the moment. We seem to have as many transfers and loan deals and departures as we do ministers resigning. A little bit of politics there. I suspect there was a sense of inevitability about it. I listened to Tony's post-match interview with the great Richard Stead after the game, and he seemed quite flat, and that's not really Tony. I think he could see the writing was on the wall. They won 1 in 8 since he made his announcement, and a lot of people are saying those two statistics go together. I just think that perhaps his time there had become untenable. All that really the club were talking about, which you could understand to some extent, was who Willie Peters was bringing in and what recruitment might look like and what next year, would have. And of course, he's not going to be part of that. So I think there's that sense of, you're doing a job almost in alienation. Danny Maguire, who's his assistant, is working for the new regime. Again, I'm not saying there's going to be any tension there, but it's just another layer that you don't want to be dealing with when the only thing you're really concerned about is trying to get your team to win again. Danny's already brought Brett Delaney in, and he's moved from York or straight away. But obviously something again that I think he felt they needed some help and assistance in the defence side of things. So he's brought in the guy who he claims was the best defender he ever played with, and that's some accolade. And I know he looked after Danny on a number of occasions, but yeah, it was all going to be all changed there. And I think that there just needed to be a cut-off point for everybody to preserve their dignity, to look back on Tony's reign and say the usual cliche that clearly he does leave the club in a much better position than he found it. That's true. I don't think anybody's going to deny that, but there's been a clear breaking down of working relationships there over the last couple of months, and it's sad that it has to end that way, because I think when you look back to the end of last season and you think that Hull KR are 80 minutes away from making a grand final, and everybody's talking about the wonderful style of rugby that they play, which is a hallmark of Tony's coaching. It's sad that they don't leave on amicable terms, which doesn't always happen anyway, and he gets to see out the remainder of the season. But what was interesting, I think, was the wording as well. Stood down. Does that mean he can join somebody else if he wants to? Is he effectively on gardening leave for the rest of the season? There's already been a couple of rumours about where he may or may not end up. One of them, of course, wouldn't mean he'd have to move from his abode in Hull. And clearly there are issues in that city regarding rugby league at the moment, and there's a feeling that maybe that what's missing at Hull FC is somebody like Tony to be that knowledgeable rugby bridge between the chairman, who wants to do things some ways, and but doesn't have the admitted level of rugby knowledge, and the head coach who Tony's worked with before as a player. So there's Hull fans after their ignominious defeat at the weekend jumping up and down saying, just tell him to cross the road. I think that there's also a link between him and Sylvain Hulls at Toulouse. I think he's got a passion for French rugby league. I think he'd like Toulouse to survive if he could help in that direction. And of course, Sylvain played for him at Huddersfield. So whether he's able to do any of that, again, it goes into the realm of speculation.
And who doesn't like baseless speculation and rumour mongering? As we speak on Wednesday, has Rowan Smith done his presser this week ahead of Magic Weekend?
Doing it at 10 o'clock in the morning.
So someone's bound to ask him if Uncle Tony's going to come and join him at Headingley, because obviously that's the other obvious place for him to go. Or in football, he could go back to football. Could do anything he wants. He stood down, as you say, an interesting phrase. They've brought in Louis Senior from Huddersfield today on loan till the end of the season, then on a permanent deal from next year for 2 years. So he gets to fit into the Hull KR system, if you will, for a few months ahead of next year, which is a good move for both, I guess.
And it's what a lot of people are doing at the moment. I mean, I think clearly a lot of these deals have been done before we get to hear about them. Once you hit that July the 1st deadline, I don't think there's too many players waiting to know what their future is. It's often when the club decides it's strategically best to announce them. But I think what's been interesting are the loan signings more than the transfers, because it is a shame to see Regan Grace go to Rugby Union. But again, I think that's been hinted at for quite a while. We didn't know he'd end up in Paris. It's clearly a blow for Wales and the World Cup if he's not going to be a rugby league player and allowed to partake in that. I don't know what Racing would think about that. I presume their season would have started, so they'd want him over there as quickly as possible. Tom Johnson going to Catalan again, heavily rumoured for a long time. Jake Truman going to Hull. Although the timing of that is absolutely bizarre, that one club should announce that he's out for at least 6 months with a knee injury, and another club says, we've signed him for part of that 6 months. It just seemed odd. I think we've known about all of those. It's the loans that are really interesting. So, again, we spoke very briefly about where Hull are at the moment, and that it's a huge hole, having witnessed them on Saturday afternoon. But they've got Jack Walker, Josh Sim, and Ellis Longstaff. There was a rumour this morning as well that they might even have Liam Sutcliffe. Clearly, there is huge change going on there by virtue of the fact that faith is being lost with their fans at the moment, and a little bit of a mixed message coming out of Hull. I think on the one hand, you've got Adam Pearson saying we're going to go with youth, we're going to go the long term. We've tried the other way, it's not really worked for us. We think there's enough talent here. We're going to promote it. We're going to give it a chance. It might be slightly away from the instant success model, and then instead of promoting youth after a poor result, goes and signs as many players with experience that at the moment are either needing fitness or a new club. So slight contradiction there in the way they're going to move ahead, but they did need to do something, and clearly they part of the problem at Hull is they haven't got all their creative players out on the field at the moment. Jake Connor, Luke Gale, and they decided Josh Reynolds wasn't for them. But creative players don't see you concede over 60 points in a home game, and that is something that needs fixing up. Josh Bowden looks like he'll be leaving. It's all balancing salary cap, bringing people in and letting them go. Going to Wakefield, it would appear. Your boys, who face the biggest game of the season on Saturday to open Magic Weekend.
Yeah, we'll beat them. That's fine. That's not a problem. They only beat Hull KR. Hull KR aren't any good. It's all right, he says. I've tipped Wakefield, so it must be all right. I mean, last week was a nightmare for tipping with all the results everywhere. It's interesting that those signings from that Hull have made. It's not as if they brought in a lot of experience there, is it? They are. I know Jack Walker's injured a lot of the time, so he would have a lot more appearances for Leeds had he not had those serious injuries. But in Sim and Longstaff, those aren't massively experienced Super League players. So one would ask the question, in the Goldfish Bowl of the city of Hull, of Kingston upon Hull, with its famed amateur clubs and academy, which has been split apart again, where's the talent? Where's the whole talent to come through into the squad? And that's no knock on the three players they've signed at all. It's just it's not really building for the future, as you say. The Hull aren't going to get relegated, so why not promote some young players and give them a go? That's what everyone else seems to do, or tries to do.
I think because they might miss out on the playoffs if they don't do something, and that again, where we all predicted perhaps they might be this year, would be in and around the top six, and obviously would not be seen as a productive year. I think it's mainly for some defensive contribution. Certainly Walker is a fine last line of defence at full back, which is no detraction on the job that Jamie Shaw has done, but clearly I don't know whether he's going to be offered a new contract for next year. But that's not really worked since Jake Connor was injured. Sim is a really good defender. You don't get to play even a game for St Helens in its current guise if you can't defend. We all know as well he is out of contract at the end of the season. He's been released by Saints, and may well be that Hull want to have a look at him. And Carlos Tumivave is another big miss for them in terms of strike threat and defensive capability. So he could slot in the centre and shore them up a bit. Ellis Longstaff, I'm not sure about. Presumably, if Bowden's going, then they need somebody in that second row position who can help. But no, it's just a really interesting time at the moment, seeing who is shedding a player to free up some money for this season. The thought is that Walker has left Leeds and may well be back next year. He's got another year of his contract to run, and that raises the question from a Leeds point of view: is what will they do with Zach Hardacre, who at one stage wasn't in their plans, and now they may be saying to him, stay on and do another year. But I suspect that's freed up some monetary space that the next club that will announce a loan signing for the rest of the year will probably be Leeds, and that's how it seems to be working. That space is being freed up for players to be bought in for the last third and the final push either away from relegation into the playoffs or maybe top three, top four. So I don't know whether the top four is done and dusted. I have a feeling that it probably is. That we know the four clubs, we don't know their finishing order, and again that's why the second game of Magic Weekend will be particularly interesting. And it was this time last year that Saints lost out on the League Leaders' Shield to the Dragons. It was later in the season, but you do feel that if Wigan were to turn them over and Saints were to lose two in a row, people would be staying in, not automatic now that they're going to be League Leaders' Shield winners. I think Huddersfield again. They've got an opportunity against a very free-flowing Salford side at the moment to shore up their top four spot, which is improvement. And it'd be really interesting to see how the Dragons go, because I think that was a seminal win for them at the weekend against St Helens. That was their marker game. That was we're still in this, don't write us off yet. We've got a few injuries. We've now got a few suspensions, but we have learned from last year about what we need. We didn't play well against St Helens in the first game of the season, but we got their measure. I think that was a fantastic result for them on Saturday in the heat of the south of France.
Yeah, great result for the Catalans, albeit it's coming across, as you mentioned, with the disciplinary issues, which has upset some St Helens fans because these issues weren't dealt with on the pitch. But that's always the case. Not everything is caught by the referees. And there's a case for saying, well, if the video referee can't see something, then you've got to be asking questions there. But this is what happens. You can say the same at Wembley about decisions for Huddersfield, but they're not made at the time. You can't go back. It's done. You move forward. Saints this week, of course, with the big derby against Wigan at the Magic Weekend. And I'll tell you what, there's been some interesting results last weekend. We mentioned Huddersfield, and Ian Watson wins the Coach of the Month. Maybe the Coach of the Month curse came a week early because they lost to Castleford on Friday night. Entertaining game. Cast, who are now, well, I guess consistent, 2 wins in a row. They've got a big game against Leeds at the Magic Weekend coming up, but as you say, Jake Truman's leaving. I wonder if Hull must have pushed the timing on that announcement, because it doesn't make any sense otherwise. Castle wouldn't have made any song and dance about his injury had they not been pushed to do so. I wouldn't have thought. It just doesn't make any sense.
No, again, I suspect it's an initial reaction to the whole lack of performance on Saturday afternoon and trying to find something to give succour to their fans that they are moving in the right direction. I'm not going to obviously detract in any way from the way Castleford played on Friday night, but I did think Huddersfield would at some point hit a flat spot. They've done absolutely magnificently post Spurs to go to places like Catalan and win, and to have that doggedness about them and that belief. But it must mentally and physically drain you. And at some point that does catch up with you. This, again, is a very unforgiving season in the regularity of the games that we're asking players to play. So, that was a very un-Huddersfield-like performance. That the one thing they tend not to do is make mistakes and miss tackles. They might not always be the team that are scoring points, but they're very, very good at knowing what the base that makes them the team they are at the moment, and they went away from that, and it was one of those games that, again, the longer it went on, the less they were going to find the things that have served them so well this season. So I think they can, I think we can understand that performance. I think the problem for Castleford this week is that not only have they now lost Truman, who looked like he was in great form in that game, but they too have lost a couple of really important people to suspension in Paul McShane and Nathan Massey. So their resources are going to be stretched at the weekend. I think Niall Evans will be back, and I genuinely think he's one of the best fullbacks in the competition and gives them a whole new dimension. But just going back to that Catalan performance and talking about teams that have every reason to hit a flat spot, they provided more players for the international weekend than anybody else. So you would have thought that then coming up with a big game against St Helens, it would have been understandable if perhaps also allowing for a couple of injuries that they had to key players, they hadn't played that well. But that's why I think they were magnificent. And their game on Sunday, and everybody's looking at Saturday games, and Saturday does seem to be the better day of Magic Weekend in terms of stories behind the matches. But their match with Warrington is fascinating now, because I genuinely don't know where Warrington are going at the moment. I don't think any Warrington fans know where Warrington are going at the moment. Another horrendous result for them at the weekend. What was it? Conceded, was it 10 points in the last 10 minutes to lose, which again is, full credit to Salford and the way they've been playing at the moment, and not even being able to name 21-man squads some weeks, and but just having almost the freedom. And in Brodie Croft and Callum Watkins, two players who are arguably amongst the best in Super League at the moment, enjoying themselves, and that will take you a long way against a team that looks so nervous at the moment. I don't know what's going to happen in that game. Is Darryl Powell's luck going to turn, or are Warrington going to write off this season, and their recruitment is geared to next? And it's one of those, well, let's pick up a couple of more wins in the remaining games just to banish any thought that we'll be dragged into a relegation battle, which again nobody could have foreseen at the beginning of the season. Or do they beat Catalan this weekend and put themselves in the frame for a late run to possibly a sixth place playoff? Darryl's saying we can't really afford to lose any more games if we're going to do that, and they're showing no sign of being able to capture that kind of form. But again, that makes that quite fascinating this week. It's almost the remainder of Warrington's season is on the line.
All results are possible, of course, but especially Warrington not winning. What can you say? Best wishes to Ryan Hampshire, by the way. Obviously, he's got a serious, I think it's the ACL as well, isn't it? So, yeah. And especially without the security of a contract that the likes of Drake Truman has, hopefully he can come back from that and resume his career in the near future. But another player who's obviously only been at Cass for a short time, but has filled a couple of gaps for them. So,
yeah, I think that's why they signed him, wasn't it? That he was versatile enough to give them cover, particularly with Gareth O'Brien being out, who also had that role. And I think we need to pay tribute to Bill Tupou as well, who has had to announce his immediate retirement. And again, that might be also helping to free up some salary cap space for Wakefield to go into the market. He's been a fine player, just cruelly hit with injury over the last 18 months probably. But on his day, a dream team centre, and whilst we will talk about the fantastic finishing of Tom Johnson, and hopefully he's going to be injury free if he's moving on to the next phase of his career, but so many of his tries were supplied by Bill Tupou. I think he's been a great addition to the Super League scene, and a shame it has to end this way.
What a great left-hand side that was with him, Matty Ashurst and Johnstone. And I think they all got in the dream team in one block as well. I think they did anyway in 2018, something like that. I can't remember. But very sad to hear of his retirement, who obviously has had a big influence on Wakefield in the last few years. But as you say, unfortunately, injuries have taken their toll on him. It would have been nice to see Johnstone and Corey Hall build up a partnership, but you can't blame anyone for A, going to a club where they've got a chance of winning something, and B, taking some money. Take the money while you can, Tom, and at least you haven't gone to Rugby Union, and at least you've not gone to Leeds. So that's the good news.
And living in the south of France, it's a different cultural experience, and I know that he will have spoken at length to some of the people, some of the other players that have done it, particularly Sam Tompkins as captain. You would think has had a chat with him about what's on offer over there. You wouldn't want to deny anybody the opportunity to do that. I do think it's unlikely, with the greatest respect to your lovely team, that Wakefield are going to win anything in the foreseeable future. But I do think that's a bit disrespectful to Wakefield to say he's moving to win something. Wakefield will be what they will be, and they'll recruit to the best of their ability. And who knows, they may have a cup run next year and win the Challenge Cup. There's no guarantee that by moving to Catalan, he is going to win something. What he probably is going to do is play in more high-profile games, which will get him in the eye of selectors of international teams. He might miss out on this World Cup, but he'd still be the perfect age for the 2025 one, which will be in France. Another good reason for going over there. And he'll play in front of a passionate group of fans that will make him very welcome, because he can do he can do things. But again, my only slight concern with that is that the tackle that effectively won the game for the Dragons last week was by Arthur Romano, and you're looking at people like him and thinking, well, where's he going to fit in when Tom Johnson arrives? Is Tom Davies going to be there next year? Is he going to move on? Is it going to be a straight replacement? Fuad Yaha, clearly you wouldn't think at this stage is going to be replaced by Tom Johnson, but for everyone who isn't an aspiring French player coming into the Dragons ranks, their place is being taken by an import. But I think it's a great signing for all parties. He's a proven finisher. He's a crowd pleaser. He's going to get the crowd over there that will appreciate what he can do. I would think it'd be interesting to see whether Dean Farre is his centre partner, because I think, again, a bit like Bill Tupou, he's very underestimated in the chances he creates for his winger. I think Tom will hopefully have a ball and an injury-free one out there, and resurrect a career which was superb at Wakefield, but just probably there is a time when you do need to get away, when you can't seem to have a run of games, and changing the environment might change his luck.
Like Gareth Ellis in the past, you don't begrudge some people leaving, but there are other people who you do, and you're glad that their careers fall flat on their face, without naming any names. But no, it would be interesting to see how he gets on in the south of France. Did you say, was he qualified for Scotland as well? Did someone say ahead of that?
And Germany.
And Germany, of course. Who may well qualify in 2025. We don't know. You never know what's going to happen. If Greece can qualify, maybe Germany.
We're hoping to know next week the qualifying process for 2025.
Has it been done on an Excel spreadsheet? So we know that.
Now that's the school tuck shop, isn't
it? Obviously, Wakefield, they've knocked down the stand. They've taken the seats out. I need to pick mine up.
Has the stand gone? Has the bulldozer moved in?
No, not yet. I mean, some people were already up on social media on Monday saying, "Why has it not been knocked down yet? I've got to take the roof off. It's got asbestos in it. You've got to get specialists in to do that." So,
are you going to go down and do a time lapse?
Well, someone should do.
Somebody should.
Someone should, because you just stick a camera on the other side of the ground, but someone might come in and nick it like they did with that scoreboard that time. He says with a raised eyebrow. But when I did a video of the South Stand being knocked down at Headingley, that got a good number of views. I mean, I was just there to interview some random Rhino people, but back in the day. But yeah, it's the kind of thing that you can document these days, and people will watch that time-lapse video of the stand being knocked down and then being built. If anyone from the club's watching,
do it. Get your camera in position now.
Easy content. It's all about, the content. And go and watch my documentary thing of the not necessarily complete history of the stand, available on YouTube.
It's very good.
It's very good.
No, it is very good.
I should enter it for awards or something. the bits that missed out because I didn't film properly, those were a shame. But never mind. Will it be missed? Nah, not really. It's just some concrete. It's just concrete. They've knocked down other stands at the ground way before I was a supporter. It would be nice to have something that looks vaguely modern-ish, at least on one corner.
Yeah, well, it's what they do with the rest of it as well, isn't it? Because what you don't want is a lopsided ground that is fit for purpose on one side and not on the others.
Is there anything else from Super League we need to mention last week?
It seemed I mean, it's only Wednesday, and it just seemed to have already been a very busy week. And I think there is more to come. But no, I think we need to probably look forward to Magic, don't we? Do you think it's going to be a success? Is the crowd figure going to be around what it has been? Are there going to be lots of people from the northeast who know of the event that are going to go along and watch it? I genuinely don't know. To me, it just seems a little bit low key this year.
I mean, I wasn't at the media event on Monday at the ground, which we used to go to when all the clubs were there, but there's only a handful of clubs there this time, and with the cost of going up to somewhere and coming back, it's a tricky thing to manage these days. So I don't know how much local media was there. They're usually there, aren't they? The local TV and radio. Does local radio exist anymore? I don't know. Wakefield, Toulouse, Saints, Wigan and Cass Leeds on the Saturday. Huddersfield, Salford in that traditional no one's in the ground at Sunday morning thing. Dragons, Wolves and the Hull Derby to finish things off. I would like to have seen stick a Women's Super League game in there on the Saturday, perhaps, to kick off things as they did with that game between Toronto and Toulouse all those years ago. There's the thing people have forgotten about. Toronto played at the Magic weekend. But they haven't.
And Newcastle playing Friday night. We've got Friday Night Lights. They're playing Bradford, aren't they, to kick it off? So, again, that's on Premiere, isn't it?
I believe so. And it's a big event to build up, of course, to the World Cup, because by the time people listen to this, it might be less than 100 days to go. And England Samoa is going to be the hottest ticket in town, we hope, that weekend in October. So I'm sure there'll be lots of publicity around Newcastle this week about the World Cup coming up. But yeah, it does seem to have snuck up this year. I don't know if that's because I haven't been paying attention or something. It may well be, but it's Magic Weekend. So, I mean, I'm looking forward to watching it from the comfort of my own home, but I will be missing the atmosphere of being there. I do enjoy going, but
the chicken cottage
and the chicken cottage, which what a memory, what a time
to be alive.
It was, and afterwards as well. I always enjoyed the Sunday morning at the Magic when you get to the ground and you see some of the journalists who hammered the free bar from the sponsors a little too hard the night before, not mentioning any names.
I'm not sure there is even that this year.
Is that well? I made the right decision not to go then, didn't I? That's the good news. I mean, as a concept, I still like Magic. I mean, I like the Bash as a concept. I don't like it being in Leeds because it seems a bit pointless, but it's the same discussion every year, isn't it, about Magic? You either like it or you don't, and it's the same thing.
I think what's really difficult is asking fans to keep shelling out. We've mentioned this before, that the cost of living crisis is affecting people in the north of England more than anywhere else, and that there has been Tottenham, and you potentially have 2 away trips to France as a Super League fan. You got the playoffs, and then you've got a World Cup. So it's a very expensive year, and maybe this would have been a year to perhaps put Magic on hold. If we were looking maybe to play slightly less rounds this year to get the international weekend in and have the players as fresh as they could be for the World Cup, we perhaps didn't need 27 rounds, and maybe one of the ones we could have lost this year would have been Magic, which is not to say that we wouldn't have gone back to the concept and rediscussed with IMG about how it works best. I get that for Sky, it's their best weekend of the year because it's the most cost effective. And you wouldn't want to upset them at the moment with the delicate nature of broadcast monies and coming ins and going out. So they may have insisted that we did still have Magic. And I get the fact that it's a lead into the start of the World Cup, and Newcastle is strategically very important. But no, my only concern is that perhaps there won't be as many people there as we would like to think there would be, and maybe not enough people from Newcastle. We're out of the football season, so you'd think that there would be a ready-made source of audience there. But I genuinely don't know how much marketing has been done in the area to let people know it's on.
I'm sure it'd be more than they ever did for the Bash in Blackpool, but that's a different thing with the RFL and Super League, isn't it? But we'll see what happens, and no doubt everyone will write their think pieces about there was no one there, Rugby League's dying, blah, 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 blah.
Oh, we might be surprised, like we were at Tottenham, that there's a lot more there than we thought there would be, and people do enjoy and relish that weekend away, and are still going. So no, we'll see. I think there are some very interesting fixtures. Although to me, Saturday is, if you were going to go, Saturday is the day you'd go, which you don't know when those fixtures are announced. What the league table is going to look like. So I fully get that. I don't think for the last game has there been a whole derby where both teams have been going into it in such abhorrent form, and both sets of fans are fearful of actually going and seeing them beaten by their most reviled opponents. Probably not.
It's all good fun. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing it as a TV product as I at least watch the first game on Saturday. I've got to go out after that one, but I'll watch all of Sunday. I think there isn't a fixture where you think I'm not interested in watching this, which occasionally on a weekend you do think, but this one seems a good weekend. I should say, by the way, celebrate Wakefield because they won in the Women's Super League against Cass 8-4. Barrow beat Bradford 18-14. Warrington hammered Lee Miners 72-0. St Helens beat Huddersfield 62-0. Again, I'm not sure why they chose that game to be on our league. And Leeds beat Wigan 48-12. You still got to pick games which have got to be competitive regardless of the standard, unfortunately, but they don't seem to do that. So it's great watching, here's a great try from Amy Hardcastle and Carrie Roberts, etc. But when there's nothing going the other way, it's not entertaining as a contest, but that's just me. Did you see the social media furore today, thanks to one of our favourite players, Rhiannon Marshall, who pointed out that she got a longer ban for what she did than Greg Worthington did at Halifax. Now, semantics on whether you watch both clips and say, well, she deserves it more than he or whatever. The interesting thing, though, is on the RFL website, you can't find the notes for Rhiannon Marshall's hearing, so you can't read them. They don't do this for the women's games. There was the player last year at Warrington who was banned for biting, and you couldn't find the reasons why. So I'm sure, I'm not saying it's not transparent, I'm not saying that, but you can't read them, so it's difficult to have an opinion. But I'm not a fan of people having a go on social media, so I'm not going to defend Rhiannon Marshall as I didn't with, what's his name, Joel Tompkins. But
I think she makes a very fair point. She makes a fair point that, there do seem to be parallels, and a women's player appears to have been punished for the same offence more than a men's player. And you should never take into account things like the length of the season, but clearly it has a more dramatic impact if they don't play as many games. I think she's right to raise it. And I think there's been a response tonight that the RFL are going to look into it as well, which, she has achieved her aim. So good on her.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll see her back on the pitch soon. I'd have her at any club because I think she's entertaining. She does things no one else does. I've said that before, but
she's a throwback in many ways to the way the men's game used to be played.
Well, I think that's something you can tag with much of the women's Super League, isn't it? But people might might take that the wrong way. Some good try, I tell you, Cass got a good try in that game against Cass. Some good footwork from Caitlin Varley. As I say, they're doing things the hard way. The Championship, Batley having, obviously conquered all the week before at Feb, draw with Whitehaven, 26-all. What an unpredictable competition and all that.
With a try in the corner in the very last minute to salvage the game. So, I think it's a very exciting division, which has closed up a little bit. I think the big game was Sheffield-London. I mean, again, talk about a game of two halves. What was it? 28-0 in the first half to the visitors Sheffield, and London won it 36-28, but they both scored 6 tries, and it was goal kicks that determined the game in the end. But London taking the game to Ebbsfleet, where they've got another game this week against Featherstone. And I think they were just short of 1,000 people. I don't know if they're one of the clubs that do declare their attendances or they haven't. But if at half time there would have been deep despair, and at full time absolute euphoria. So that seemed like the game of the weekend. Although full credit to Whitehaven for taking a point off Batley. But it's closed up a little bit, the division. York losing was probably
good
the other.
Barrow,
the other surprise result, and hats off to Barrow, who issued a statement early this week saying we're up for Super League. We make it, we're going for it. We'll be Cumbria's representative, which I thought was not necessarily brave of them, but clearly signalled an ambition, which other clubs perhaps in that division have not been quite so ready to do.
Big win for Hunslet as well, winning away at Cornwall. They've not had the most consistent of seasons, and Cornwall going in front in that one early. That was an important 2 points for the mighty Myrtle and Flame with that 36-24 win on Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I again didn't see it on our league because and I don't understand why, even looking at the fixtures this weekend, you would have thought, don't play anybody at the same time as Magic Weekend if you seriously want to get all the fans up there. We mentioned that before, but we know Sky are featuring every one of those games. We know the times those games are going out, and you're looking at what's happening in the Championship and League One, and we're also putting out games at the same time as the major broadcaster putting millions of pounds in. I'd be having a quiet word saying, I like the idea of our league. We know not everybody supports Super League, but we really don't want you putting on alternative provision while we're spending even £24 million to promote your product. So I don't understand.
It's a good job they didn't show those amateur games at Fev on Saturday afternoon, isn't it? Because that might have been.
Was that the one where the referee walked off?
That's
one in Leeds as well. That is concerning, and that's not going away, and we need to do something about that. And I don't know what the answer is, but clearly some of the issues are societal, and but referees feeling that their safety is threatened is just not acceptable anyway whatsoever.
I need to let you go finish a magazine, Phil. Well, do as much of it as possible because
it's that week again.
It's got to be out. I finished my column, which is amazing.
I'm editing it now.
Not amazing. Not amazing.
Talking to you now,
but it's finished. But we'll be back on Monday. We'll have a special guest. If I say special guest, then it doesn't turn up. Then it's just us again. But we will have a guest on Monday, and we've got a guest now because the Magic Weekend is supported by Sky Zero. Here's me in commercial radio mode. And here to tell us all about Sky Zero and what it is and stuff, it's Jon Wells off the telly.
I was kind of woken up to it by my daughters, and you grow up as a 20-something-year-old bloke, and you're selfish by nature, and we're in a profession which requires a degree of self-absorption, and then you become a parent, and then your kids start asking questions. And just one Christmas, I got a little wish list for Santa. My daughter was 7 or 8, I think, at the time. And usually you'd have the list as long as your arm, wouldn't you? Barbies and Lego and all that other stuff. And she wanted one thing. She'd written one thing on it, and it was litter picker. And so we went and asked her about it. And we said, "What's the story here?" And she said, "Well, when you walk me home from school, Daddy, I look down. There's a chain link fence that goes down the side of the school next door, and it's just full of empty crisp packets and wrappers and stuff. And I thought it looked terrible, so I wanted to do something about it. And it was the most stupid of moments like that, and that it." It's a lit a fire in me, but you just go, what are we doing here? What example are we setting? That was back in 2017, and I think since then, I'm not like most people. We separate the plastic and the cardboard, and you put your recycling out, and you think you're doing a good job, and then you actually look at the next little bits you could do. And I'm in a very privileged and fortunate position to be able to not only have the disposable income to make choices that I know other people perhaps couldn't, particularly at a stage now when we have there's a cost of living crisis, an energy crisis. But I decided to change my vehicle, so I drive an electric car now, and I live in a passive house. We're still on with the recyclable stuff. I've been involved with Sky for a long time, and Sky they don't shout enough about what they do. They've been a carbon neutral company since 2006. And they're aiming to go net zero carbon by 2030, which is the bit that involves not just their direct carbon footprint, it's the supply chain and everything. And this was the kind of first public-facing thing they've done. I know there's an awful lot of time and effort gone into it, and I think a degree of nervousness, certainly around some of the big athletes that were, would have perhaps felt like hypocrites or felt like they were going to have brickbats thrown at them. But it's a conversation that we have to have, and there are a number of different areas where people can do little small things that will add up to make a big difference. And so we're using the Magic Weekend as a brilliant opportunity. Super League have jumped on board, the clubs are on board. You're starting to see there's little initiatives in there. So Warrington, the recycled shirt. You've got the Ecotricity guy in football, his name escapes me at the moment, who owns Forest Green Rovers. And just using that as a bit of a blueprint and going, right, well, what could we do at Magic Weekend? We had a little bit last year, I don't know if you noticed, we had some mic heads that were green, and just a little subtle nod to it. And this year we've been able to go all in. So it'll be a message that we'll be giving to the fans throughout the weekend. You know, what things in your life could you, without hamstringing yourself, what decisions could you make differently? Instead of just going for the burger, try the plant-based option. I mean, some of the stuff that we're cooking at home is phenomenal, the plant-based options you can get now. Don't drop your litter, put your litter in a litter bin, use recyclable cups, all that sort of stuff is may not feel like an awful lot, but makes a big difference. And look, I appreciate, people are going, shut up, John, what, I've got bigger things to worry about, and I get that as well. So look, we're not evangelising, and everybody's at different stages on that journey. So I did this because I wanted to do this, and I've been involved with the kind of backside of this at Sky and at Super League for a long time now. So I'm just dead chuffed that it's happening.
Magic Weekend supported by Sky Zero. We're talking about the stats as well. They involve the GPS stats. I find it fascinating just to see how they go from a player's back of their neck to the screens on TV. How important are they to you to tell those stories to people about how amazing our athletes that we know are, but we need to tell them that they are?
Well, there's two sides to it. I think the first happens in club training, where it's starting to inform now the amount of distance and the intensity with which they train. Now that used to be just led by a coach. You go back 20 years and coaches weren't letting players off the field until they got that move right, or until they've seen enough sweat coming out of an ex-player. They now realise that there's a direct correlation between that intensity of exercise and injury. Now, if we're in the business of entertainment and we want our best players out on the field, I think that has huge value at club level in informing physios and support staff and coaching staff in when to pull the pin on training or ease off a little bit, so that we, on a Thursday and Friday night when we tune in, get to see the stars of our game playing at peak fitness and on the field and injury-free. From a broadcast point of view, and I'll go fast forward to Magic Weekend, where we're going to collaborate with Catapult to provide the GPS stuff. It's just another way in which we can tell a story. We can provide another layer of colour, an element of context to what these athletes are doing. Sometimes when you've got so many good players, all of an elite level, the actual standard gets lost because it's all relative. They're all fast, they're all strong, they're all, they've all got great stamina and great speed. So to be able to stick numbers and metrics on that, and then to be able to tell people at home what that means, I'm hoping I'm hoping that'll really land with people and really resonate with people, and they'll, anybody who's run a 10k knows what they feel like at the end of a 10k, and you tend to do a 10k around a loop in a park, and you may have to dodge out the way of a dog every now and again, but you're not dodging 13 other blokes and running a million different changes of direction and getting hit during that as well. So if we can provide that extra level of colour and context, I think that's going to be all the better for the viewer.
I mean, how have things changed since your playing career in terms of the information that coaching staffs have been able to work with in terms of things like that?
It's one of those what ifs, I think. I was fortunate to have a fairly long career. How that would have differed and how much better I would have been able to perform on a match day had I had access to this, because my career finished in 2009, and I never saw a GPS what you call it, GPS tracker. So to see where it's come now in the last 20 years, I think certainly the last 12 years is phenomenal. And Ben spoke very eloquently earlier about just how that informs kind of risk exposure and exposure to injury, and also as an assessment of how hard players are working. I think the athlete can take confidence in that as well. Now it's an established norm. The players' shirts are they're manufactured with the pouch in it to slot the GPS tracker in, and it's become as much a part of their match day outfit as the boots, and I think that's great. That's how it should be. That's before you even get into the gum shield stuff and the concussion protocols and all that other kind of stuff, and monitoring and assessing, how impacts to the head affect people. I think it's just a positive, and I wish I'd had it.
One of the great things about Sky's coverage of the cricket has been the legends of the game explaining how they play things. There was a great one last year with Wasim Akram and Waqar Younis showing how they bowled.
Yeah.
And obviously Rugby League does parts of that, and the golf as well. How much more of that would you like to see in terms of Sky's coverage, explaining how the players do what they do? Because we watch on the sidelines and it blows your mind that they can do these things. How important is it that we explain how they do it in their own words?
Given that's a huge part of my job, I'd say massively important. I've always loved the analytical side of it. I've always wondered why player X did that, why he made that decision in defence, for example. Jake Connors, somebody I'm doing a piece on in the near future, and this is a piece of broadcast which will be at the touchscreen. And one of the questions that I'll be asking him is, well, what's going through your mind? What have you seen that seemingly nobody else on that field has seen? And how do you do it again and again and again and again without people figuring it out and putting plans in place to stop you? I think I'm biased because it's kind of the area that I'm interested in. But look, again, just one element of our broadcast, which is, I think covers the game really well, and from the stories, the background stories from players to the technical analysis of plays. I think we cover a lot of bases there. My interest has always been, from a very young age, as much about when the lights go down as it is whistle to whistle. The majority of people who sit at home will turn it on 5 minutes before kick-off and turn it off at full time. Does it occur to you what the athlete does between ignore minute 1 to minute 80? What do they do then that entire backside of the week when no one's watching? And I think it's testament to the very, very best of us, and James Roby will be a perfect example of that he must be doing a hell of a lot to still be performing at that level in that tiny 80-minute window, the amount of work that goes in behind. So I think that's those are really interesting stories, always have been to me anyway.